All right, so we'll get this going. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. My name is Louis Marcoux. I'm a technical specialist for Autodesk Canada. And today we'll be talking about what we've done at Siggraph 2012 to show 3ds Max 2013. And mainly we did two things at Siggraph. On the main stage, we did a casual games workflow demonstration, and we did some private demos or technology previews of the extension release for 3ds Max. And this extension release is available now for all customers that were on subscription, that are on subscription. But at the Siggraph timeframe, this release was not out yet, so it was a technology preview. So we'll take a look at the two during this presentation. Before we move on to into the presentation, I'd like to thank Mixamo, our partners, for this webinar. And actually, during the demonstration, you'll see some of the Mixamo tools that we've incorporated in Max 2013, and they're pretty cool tools for people that want to do animation with characters. So basically, what they offer is animations and characters that you can download from the web, and you have an interface in 3ds Max where you can see the animations on your character, or even browse through a set of library of characters. So mainly the tools that we have for animation is you can browse through a large collection of animation, and you can do this on biped or cat rigs. No, it doesn't matter which one, so it supports both. You can customize the animation, and I'll show that in the presentation a bit later. You can get the free preview, and you can see it on your rig, and this is kind of unique workflow inside of 3ds Max, so you'll be able to see that during the presentation. And then you decide how you're going to bake this. Either you want to download an FBX file or bake the keys. And in order for you to test this, we offer Mixamo offers a set of free animation, and you can browse through them and take a look at that. Same thing for characters. They have a library of characters. And when you buy a character, it's provided with biped and cat rigs, and there's a set of free characters if you want to try them and see how they work and all of that. So again, thank you for Mixamo to be partner with this webinar, and you'll see their tools in the presentation today. So the first thing we'll take a look at is casual games workflows, and the demo was basically made in two parts. The first part was going from 2D to 3D, and for that I'll use a game called Band Together that was made for the iPad, and it's the concept of taking 2D assets and bring them to life in 3D, and using different 3D tools to create a 3D world, and to also create animation with characters and dynamics and all of that. And you'll see in this presentation the end result will be sent to Unity, so you'll see the workflow between 3ds Max and Unity, and also how to publish to either iOS or to Flash. It's pretty much the same workflow, so you'll see that during the presentation. Finally, I'll do, for the casual game workflow, we did a part where it's taking 3D assets and rendering them to 2D sprites, and that's a common workflow in a 2D game. So it's why 3D assets are important in order to deliver faster games and get really good results and really good visuals for a 2D game. So it's using 3D to provide, in the end, 2D sprites. So we'll see this workflow for that. So that's going to be my demo for casual games. Then we'll jump into the extension release for 3ds Max. And in what we focus for this one, we invested in Particleflow to create more advanced particle effects, and also it's good for motion graphics. Essentially, all the customers that are on 3ds Max subscription will have access to this extension release. And the tools are the cache to disk, so we'll see that, why it's important. We'll see also some tools for caching selective channels. That's more advanced, but that's there as well. We've got some Mass Effects operator that allows you to integrate Particleflow events and particles into Mass Effects simulation. And with that, you can create some pretty cool effects. And also, the big part of this is what we call data operator and tests, and it's a visual toolkit that allows you to build your own Particleflow operator. So you can visually program very complex behaviors for particles and create some operators that you can distribute in your team or other people. So that's the plan for today. So I hope you enjoyed. We have a lot to cover, so I'll get right into it. All right, so in this first part, we're going to take a look at the workflow for going from 2D to 3D in the context of casual games. And that's a demonstration that I've built for Siggraph 2012. And we did a first iteration of that at GDC 2012 as well. And it's showing you a few, and I've changed it from GDC to Siggraph to show you a few tips and tricks on different things. So it's meant for people to that are new to 3D, that want to bring 2D content to 3D. But I've given I've made it so that we can take a look at a few tips and tricks on more advanced stuff. So you'll see. I think it's quite interesting. Anyway, so to start with, we're going to take a look at we're going to use the content from a game called Band Together, and I want to give them full credit because it's they've been very collaborative in giving us their assets and letting us use their art from the game. So I want to give them full credit for that. So again, the game is called Band Together. I'm just going to run through the preview here. You see that those guys are called bandits, and they're fighting against push pins in a cardboard kind of world, and it's made for the iPad, and it's made with Unity, and we're going to see the workflow between 3ds Max and Unity in this presentation as well. So you see that these guys are being killed by push pins, and that's kind of the idea for the game. Just if you are interested in finding more about Band Together, I'm just going to give you the URL here at the end. So bandtogether.thegame.com, and it's available. It's not coming soon, it's available now. When I got the trailer, it was coming soon, but now it's available. You can go get it on your iPad, and it's pretty fun to play. So we're going to start with 2D content. So this is a sketch for the main character called the Bandy. And we want to bring this into the 3D world. So there's a few ways you could bring this. You can redraw this in 3D, but if it exists anywhere in a vector shape, you can bring it into 3ds Max. For example, in this case, we can go and import the AI file or the Adobe Illustrator file. And this is just the outline of the character. So I'm just going to merge it in here, and I'm going to merge it as a single object. And you see that we got the character, the outline of the character already in 3ds Max. So I don't have to draw it again. So it's a quick workflow between bringing 2D assets to 3D. That's already a good starting point. If you intend to export to a game engine, everything needs to be in the correct orientation and also centered at 0, 0, 0. It's part of the best practices if you want to export assets to game engine. So I'm going to grab all of this. It's already selected. And if I go in the edit here, you'll see that we have the transform toolbox. I'm just going to bring it into the window here. This is a tool that you can use to do very quick things on quick operation on models. So if I just go here and say I want to rotate it 90 degrees, I can pick and choose different degrees here, but 90 degrees is good, and it's always based on my point of view. So it's very easy to just go here and say I want to rotate it 90 degrees. I want to bring all of this at the center of the world, and what you can do as well is say grab all of this and say the pivot point of this guy, I want it to be at the center of this object and also at the minimum in Z. So I'm going to say minimum in Z, and now I can say center this at 0, 0, 0, and now my character is standing from the 0, 0 the origin of the world, and it's going up. So that's a really quick way to place your objects at the right place and be ready to export to the game engine when it's going to be ready for exporting. So now let's take a look at what we can do with this guy. Now it's only a 2D outline, so we'd like to make it a little bit more thick. So to do this, I'll go in and I'll put the extrude modifier, and the extrude modifier will give it a bit of thickness. So I don't want that to be that thick, so maybe 0.15 will be good. It's kind of thick, so maybe 0.1 will be good for that. And here we go, maybe a little bit less than that, something like this. So we'll live with this one. Okay, so I'm happy with this thickness. Now I want to change it. I want to refine the look of this. I want to give it more of a 3D kind of look. So I'm going to apply the Edit Poly modifier, and I'm going to start to work at the element level, where I'm going to just grab the two eyes here, and just grab the two eyes. Just grab I1 and I2. I'm just going to deselect this guy here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to select those two here like this. It's going to be easier. And then I'm going to go in move mode and just move it forward like that. I'm going to do the same thing for a few parts there so that it's a bit more 3D. Maybe the arms should be back here, something like that. And it's just a matter of moving them in 3D space so that they look a bit more they look a bit more interesting like this. And now we have a character that fits a bit more in 3D space. I can refine some of these by using the Edit Poly modifier tool. And the Edit Poly Modifier tool are on the right side here, but they're also part of this menu called the Graphite menu. And the Graphite menu allows you to see all of the tools in a graphical way kind of thing. And you can tear off certain tools at certain panel that you want to use more frequently. So for example, if I go here, I just want to do some extrusion. I'll go in face mode and I'll find the polygon tools here. And this is the extrude settings here. So I'm just going to, I'm actually going to use the bevel tool because I want to bevel the roundness of the eye. So I'm going to grab the faces that I want to work with. with, those two faces. Go again in polygon, and go, if I want to use this menu, I can tear it off and put it here, and now I'm going to be able to access those tools in a much quicker fashion like this, and I can just extend it and leave it out there. But now I'm just going to use the bevel tool, and I'm going to use the bevel setting, and it brings me in canvas menus, and we call them the caddies. And the caddies allows me to define how I want to extrude with this. So I want to go by polygon or by local normal. So by group normal here is fine. It's just a face, so we're going to be good with that. And here I can say, well, I want that to be a bit higher like this, and I want that to be a bit smaller, something like that. And I'll say I want to do this again, so I'll say plus. And so I'm going to reduce this here like that. I want to give them a round kind of shape, something like that. Maybe a little bit more. And plus one last time, something like this, and say accept. And now we have eyes that are a bit more rounded. So I don't need that anymore, so I'm just going to put it here. I could put it back into the menu. And if I want to turn this off, I can go and just say turn it off, and it's back off. So let's say I want to change a few vertices. I can go at the vertex level, and I can go here in sculpt mode or in just a move mode, and I can adjust the shape of the head and make it look exactly the way that I want it to look. So that's kind of the basic workflow of taking 2D content and bring it to 3D. But in 3D, what's going to be very, very important is the texture of the model. So to do the texturing, and actually just before we move in, this is my attempt to do the bendy, and I'm just going to show you the final production mesh. So that's the one that they use for the game. As you can see, pretty much refined. You see that we have the objects back and forth there to give it a sense of 3D, and we've refined the shape of the head here. But now we're ready to just go and say we want to give it some texturing. And in 3ds Max, if I go into the material editor, I'll just go into the slate material editor, and I'll do something that is not a common workflow, but it allows you to have a quick access to different look that you want to achieve. So this guy is made of cardboard or crumpled paper. So I'll go here and I say map standard, and I'll just grab a substance map. So a substance map, now there's just a substance map itself, allows you to load from a set of around 80 substance map that ships with 3ds Max, and you can buy more if you want to on Turbo Squid. But substance, it's a set of different maps that feed a material. So the diffuse, the normal, the glossiness. But what we're going to do now, we're just going to use the substance map, and I'm going to find, there's one here called crumpled paper. I'm just going to open it up, and I'm going to maximize this so that we can see it a bit better, like this. And you see that it has this crumpled paper look, but I can also go here and say change the seed or make different seed or different variations. So I can use different variations of this. I can say, well, less crumpled, more crumpled. I can change the amount of dirt on it. I can change the color itself, so I can make it more on the orangey side if I want to, and things like that. So when I've got this done, I can right click on this and say render map. So it's going to take whatever we've done here, and it's going to render it as a bitmap. So let's say 512 by 512 so that it fits in the recording window for me, and I'll say render, and it's going to render this, and it's going to be available for me. So I just wanted to have this as an image that is visible on the screen, because now I want to use this as a clone source to go onto this and to start to do some painting and use it as a source to start with. So now that I've got this guy here, I'll go in tools, and I'll grab the viewport canvas. And the viewport canvas allows me to paint onto this model. So if I go here and paint, you'll see that it right now doesn't have any material or any 3D material. So I'll say assign standard material, and I want to go to paint the diffuse color. And we'll use 1024 by 1024. And I'll just, where did I put this? So I'm just going to put that here, and I'm going to overwrite that file that I've created here called PNG, paint canvas.png. And yes, I want to overwrite it. That's fine. And we're good with that. So actually, let me go back here. Did I save the alpha or not? Yes, I want to override it. Okay, that's good. And I'll just grab 24-bit. That's fine. Okay, now that we got this, we have now a first layer, which is our background. I'm going to add a new layer so that I'm not doing anything anything on the background. And now I can start to paint on this mesh here and define the color. And I can go here and change the color itself and say I want to paint in red. And you can go and paint on this model. So that's not exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I want this to be my base for the texture. So I can go in clone mode, and in the clone mode we have different options here. So the clone source in the paint behavior, it's currently cloning only from the current layer. So I'll say clone from screen, which means that I can clone from anywhere on the screen. So that's part of the screen, or that's visible on the screen. So I'll go here and I'll say that's going to be my source. So Alt to grab the source, and then I'm just going to make the brush a bit bigger, and I can start to paint and add this texture to my character like that. So it's very easy to just go here and say, well, we're going to create a base layer of that texture. I'm just going to go around here and grab a bit more like that, and a bit more here, something like that here, and on the leg here as well, something like that. Anyway, so it's a rough version of it, but we get the idea. Oops, I'm going to grab this here and paint. Anything that's visible on the screen is going to be painted. So I can also paint the 3ds Max menus if I want to, but that would be inappropriate here. So I'm just going to close this window, and now I can say, well, this is my layer here. I'm going to add a new layer, and we're going to go and paint the black outline for this character. So I'm going to reduce the size of the brush, make it darker. And by working with layers, you'll see that it's quite interesting, because if you make a mistake, or if you want to work with multiple layers, you can work with multiple layers, mainly if you're used with Photoshop, and so things like that. So I'm just going to go and paint over this just for now, and I can go on and continue with the others. And because it's on a separate layer, I can define the opacity. I can go here and say blur it. So if I want that to be a little bit blur, I can do that as well. Also, what I can do is I'm going to add a new layer, bring it under, and what I'll do is I'll choose a kind of a beige kind of layer, and I want to do some splatter here so that it randomizes the area here, the color of the area around here. So I want to do this. I'll change the transfer mode to color burn. So all of these transfer modes are quite familiar to people using Photoshop. So I'll go say here color burn, and I'm going to use some scatter effect, and I'm going to use a mask, and I'm just going to use a splatter kind of effect here. And because we're adding a bit of spacing, and I can also go into the randomize part and say randomize the brush radius between this and this, randomize also the opacity. And now if I go and start to paint, you see that it has some randomness to it, so that it's nice to give a bit of texture there. So that's going to be my effect here. Because it's on a separate layer, I can define how strong I want that to be. And again, if I want to enhance the contrast, the brightness of it, I can do that here. And if I want to add just a little bit of blur on that, I can do that as well. So now we have some nice texturing around that black edge. Another aspect here, let's say I want to do the eyes, and I want to do some masking for the eyes, because I only want to work on the eyes. You saw that when I painted that black outline, it kind of went through the eyes. So what I can do here, I can go, I'm just going to turn off the paint tool for now. And when you turn off the viewport canvas, it's going to tell you you're working on a PNG file right now, and it doesn't have the concept of layer. So what I'll do here is I'll say save as a PSD file and replace the texture in the material. So now instead of working on the PNG, we'll work on the PSD file. So I'll say yes, and I'll just overwrite this file here that I've already prepared. So just going to overwrite it. That's fine. So now that we've got this overwritten, and we've got a PSD file, we can go back to it anytime we want. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to that editable poly. I'll grab those two elements, which are the two eyes. I'll go in rendering, and I'll use the render surface map. The render surface map is a tool that allows you to quickly render different maps that are useful for games. Cavity map, density map, subsurface kind of a map. So if you want to create a subsurface kind of effect, ambient occlusion map, selection to bitmap, which is the one that I'm going to use now, and a few others here that are quick to creating different types of effects for a game. So I'll go here, say selection to bitmap, and what it's going to do, it's going to render this map, which is just all the faces that are currently selected are saved. So I'll just copy that to the clipboard, and I don't need this surface map tool anymore. I don't need to be in the element mode anymore. And I'll just go back to the canvas here, and I'll create a new layer. And that new layer, I can put it on the top here. And that new layer, I'll add it a mask. So I'll go in layer, add mask, and I'll say reveal all. And in the mask here, when I select the mask and not the RGB part of it, just the mask, I'll say load bitmap from current layer, or load bitmap into current layer if it's a bitmap, if I saved it on the file, or just say paste from clipboard, and now it's pasted from clipboard. Now this is my mask for this layer. So if I go back to the RGB and pick, some kind of green color, now I can go and paint on this here, and actually I'm going to turn off the mask here, and I can start to paint, and I'm going to turn off the randomization as well. Here we go, and I'm going to make this a bit bigger. You see that as I'm painting, even if I go across the eye, it stays on the eye and it doesn't paint anywhere else. If you didn't have this mask, you would not be able to do that part only on the eyes there. So once this is done, What I can do here is I can say, well, I want to do a black outline, so I'm just going to do that as well. I can do it on this specific layer, or I can do it on a separate layer, but I'll do it on this layer here, something like that. And we're going to paint around, and that's not really great. Oh, actually, I got some scattering here, it's still on. I'm going to turn this off, and now we have the black outline. So I've done it quite fast, but this is kind of the idea of how this texture was built. What's great about this is that because we've made it all of these were based out of layers and PSD file, what I can do is I can go to Photoshop right away and say File, Open, and we're going to open up that PSD file, and this is the PSD file that we just created. And you see all the layers are there, everything is intact. And what I can do here is, let's say I want to put a text object in there, or text layer. We don't have a text tool in the viewport canvas, so I can go here and say text, and I'm going to say Bandy. So that's the name of the character, and I'm going to put it somewhere like here, and that's at the top of the stack here, and I'll say save, and I'm going to minimize Photoshop, and I'm just going to refresh here, and you see that Bandy, the layer, is there. So if I just go into the pane so that we can see, you can see that the Bandy text layer is there, and then we have the tools to move it, to rotate it, to scale it. So I can go back here and say, well, I want that to be pretty much like there. I want to rotate it so that's kind of like here, and I want to scale it down. I don't want that to be that high, that big, so I'm going to put it like this. And you see we have full access to the layers themselves because it's done on a separate layer. I can do that here on that layer, and I can again define the opacity. I can blur it and all of that. All of these filters. So just to give you an idea of what we get in the end, I'm just going to show you the final one that was used for the production, and that's the bandit here that we're going to use later for animation. So now I'm going to jump into a different file, and we're going to talk about animation in using this character. So here is our character in the context of one of their levels, which is made of cardboard, so we can see how it looks like in context. And we would like to animate this character to give him some motion for the game. There's different ways of animating in 3ds Max for characters. There's the Max Bones, which is the most advanced, I would say, that where you can rig and add your own constraints and make it very flexible and customized. We also have Biped, which is good for bipedal creatures like human. And we have Cat, Character Animation Toolkit, that can rig and animate all sorts of creatures very quickly and very efficiently and very easily. So that's the system that we're going to look at, Cat, because that's the one that was used for this game. And Cat is in the motion panel here, sorry, in the creation panel, and we're going to go in Tab and in the helpers and choose the Cat objects. If I click on Cat Parent, 3ds Max ships with a bunch of presets, so all of these presets are accessible. So if I want to create a base human, which is the case here, I'm just going to drag in a base human, and you have a base human in your scene. And if you want to create something like a spider, just drag in here a spider, and we're going to have a spider in the scene. If I want to do a dog, a cat, or anything that's quadruped, we can use the panther. So I'm just going to drag in the panther here, and we've got the rigs there. So all of these are skeleton structure that can be used inside of the characters, but they're very flexible. So it's not because they look like this now and the proportion is like this that you're not able to change them. So for example, if I want to use a quadruped here and I would like to have a very long neck, so I'm just going to bring the neck very high. And if I want to have a lot of nice motion in the neck, I can go back here and say I want to change the number of bones, and I want that to be 10. So now we have 10 bones for this neck. I can make this character say, well, I want the rib cage to be a bit higher. I want the hand to be here, maybe there. So you can see all of these bones are automatically adjusting and placing and orienting, and based on their placement that you choose. So it's very easy to put a character skeleton in a character shape and make it match exactly. So that's how those rigs were. That's how the cat rig. That's how the Bandy rig was used. That was built using a cat. So I'm just gonna delete all of these that we've made, and I'm going to show you the cat rig here. So the rig is pretty simple, as you can see. A few bones. It's a pretty simple character that we want to export to Unity for the and actually build as a HiPad game. So it has a very limited number of bones, and all of these shapes here that you can see are just gizmos that allows you to quickly access the skeleton if you don't see the skeleton from outside of the mesh. So different ways of animating with Cat. So the way that it works, if we go to the motion panel, you see that we have a layer manager, and the layer manager allows you to add different types of layers depending on how you want to animate. let's say that we want to animate manually, which is kind of the case for a lot of people. I'm going to go in absolute mode and go in animation mode. And now if I turn on auto key, everything that I will be recording on the timeline will that I will be doing will be recorded on the timeline. So if I go to frame 10 and I say I want this character to move forward, so I want his foot to be something like here, and have the pelvis to follow like that, something like this, and then I can go back to frame 5 and say, well, I want the leg to kind of rise up as he walks, and now we have something like a walk cycle that looks like this, and we can move him back something like that, and now we have our walk cycle. As he walks, I can say, well, I want the head to start to lower, something like this at this point, maybe look left or right. I can grab the arm here and say I want the arm to be lower, and same thing like this here. I want the arm to be like that, and maybe forward like that, or actually that would be back like this, and this one here would be forward. And now we have something that looks like the beginning of a walk cycle. I'm not going to go too much into animation, but that's kind of the basics of animating with an absolute layer of animation. So that's a blank sheet of animation. You create your animation manually. If you want to create walk cycles or any types of character moving in a scene, you can use the cat motion. So if I go into a new layer and I say I want to add a cat motion layer, the cat motion allows you to procedurally define how this character is going to walk. Right now, the default walk cycle doesn't really fit my character, so I can enable the cat motion interface, and we're just going to move so that we can see the character. And I can start to adjust all of the limbs and the settings for this walk cycle. Let's start with the globals, where we see that the step time is kind of short. So we're going to make it longer so that the character, sorry about that, so the character walks a bit slower. The stride length, you see that the character is kind of stretching here. So we're going to reduce that to maybe 70, and you see that it's going to fit more with the size of the body. Now we can adjust the attitude of this character. I can go into pelvis here and say I want to adjust the twist and the roll, and give him some attitude like that. I can adjust the lift so that he goes up and down, and you can adjust the attitude of your character like that so that he or she moves differently. By adjusting all of these things, you can create all sorts of walk cycle. And because they're all done in place, it's great for games because you can export this as an in-place animation and then use your game logic to define where your character is going inside of your game. So just export the raw in-place animation, and you've got game type animation. Another way to animate in CAD, actually, and to do that, I'm just going to delete all of these layers here. We're going to go back from scratch and delete this one. What I want to do is show you the Mixamo animation store. The animation store is a resource for you to go if you want to try different animations on your character. And the workflow here is kind of unique, where I'm going to go to the utilities and go in more animation store. All you have to do is make sure that you're connected to the internet and click on the pelvis of your character. Now that's a cat character. It also works with biped character. So if you're using a biped rig, it's going to work as well. And what you do here is that you can go in search motion. It's going to open up a web browser that allows you to look at different types of animation. So let's say we want our character to walk. Just click on this animation here. And you see that because we are previewing in scene, our character is going to be automatically previewed in the scene. So this here is kind of has some weird rotation for the head. So it's not working really well for a character, but we can go back here and let's say we want to try maybe some salsa dance there. So I'm going to search salsa, and I'm going to click on this one and see how this character is dancing with salsa. So we got our character dancing salsa. It's kind of working fine. Maybe the arms are too close to each other, so I can make the arms, maybe arm space a bit wider. So we're going to make that wider, and we can define a few things. And once you're happy, you can just say buy the motion, and it's going to download it on your character, either as an FBX file or you can bake the keyframe manually. But it's a huge bank of motion capture files that you can browse through, and Mixamo is adding more and more to them as we go. And the idea is that you can preview them before buying them. So before buying anything, you can see if it works for your character. So it's a great workflow that has been added to Max 2013 in collaboration with Mixamo. So I'm going to turn this off here and show you another thing that we've added for Max 2013 that is kind of exclusive for this version. We have a cat character, and we would like it to animate based on a motion capture file that we've done in Motion Builder. So to do that, I'm just going to select everything here, Control A to select everything. It's actually only the character here, and say Send to, and Motion Builder, and send it as a new scene. And what's new in Motion Builder 2013? Actually, I'm going to delete the camera here. It always creates a camera, so I'll always delete that. And I'm going to delete the target as well. Here we go. So the character is loaded in Motion Builder, but what's new in 2013 is that the character, because it's a cat character, it's already recognized by Motion Builder. So you don't have to go through the process of manually defining the character bone by bone. It's already done. You're already ready to use it. And as you can see here, it says connected to 3ds Max. So whenever I'm happy with the animation I've got in Motion Builder, I can send it back to 3ds Max and by just pressing the update button. So let's go and see what we can do. So because it's already recognized, I can say, well, I want to start animating and I want to use a control rig as a source. It doesn't have one yet, so I'm going to say, yeah, create it. That's fine. And now that it's created, I can just grab the arm here. And you see that the full body IK rig works immediately for the character. So I can grab the head and do all of these things. And it's all based on the Motion Builder's unique full body IK system. So now that we have this on our character, we can animate manually. Or what I'll do is in the tutorials for Motion Builder, there's an animation called Punch. So I'm going to just merge it in and merge the punch guy. And now that we have this guy, you can see that the size of your character or the height of the character, the number of bones is completely different. But if I just say for my character, instead of using the control rig, you're going to use the punch guy, you'll see that the animation will match perfectly the motion capture that was done. So any motion capture file that can load in Motion Builder as an FBX file, you can retarget it dynamically like this to your character, and no matter how big or how small or the number of bones, it's immediately retargeted to your character. So when I'm happy with this, I can go here and say Update 3ds Max, and we can minimize Motion Builder. And we'll see that Motion Builder automatically, with the interaction with 3ds Max, created an animation layer here called Take 02, and that Take 02 is now part of our scene. So it's a very simple workflow: send to, animate, bring back. And you can see here that the arms are kind of getting in touch with each other at some point in time. So I can go back here and say I want to add an adjustment layer, go in Auto Key mode, and grab the arms there and say I want to move them a bit aside like that, and grab this one here and I want to move it aside as well. And we've just created a keyframe that will make our whole motion a bit wider. So we can make all of these adjustments, make the animation look exactly the way that you want. And once you're happy with it, you can save it and you can reload it on the rig later. So in this case here, I'm going to add an absolute layer, and that's the layer on which I want to load this animation. So I'm going to go to the parent here and say I want to load, and where did I put this one? So that's going to be in my casual game, scene assets, animation. It's called punch.clp, and it's just the same punch animation, but adjusted for that scene here. And you can see that it's much faster, and the arms have been adjusted, and it's punching something here. The thing is, we don't know what it's punching. So what I've done here is I've brought the thumbstack or the push pin machine, and we would like this character to punch it angrily and destroy it. So in order to destroy it, we're going to bring this into Mass Effects, which is our dynamic simulation engine. So I'm going to right click here and say Mass Effects, and all of the objects that are currently selected, the machine, I'm going to set all of these objects to be dynamic rigid bodies. Now they're being simulated with a convex hull. So I'm going to change that. I'm just going to simulate with capsules. It's just a simulation mesh so that it simulates much faster, and we can get results in real time in a viewport very quickly. So now that we're done with this, if I simulate, what's going to happen is just going to blow apart because it's going to repulse right at the first frame. So I'm going to select all of these objects again and say at the beginning I want them to start in sleep mode. So when they are in sleep mode, you'll see that at the beginning nothing happens, and as soon as they're being now it destroys. And that's the animation that I want. So when I'm happy with that simulation, I go here and I say bake all. And the reason why we bake is that all of these now will receive a standard transformation, rotation, and scale keyframe that can be used by the game engine without any problem, no matter which game engine you're using. So now that's my animation, and I'm ready to export. So I'm going to unfreeze everything in my scene, Control A to select everything in the scene, and I'll go here, say export selected, and I'm going to export. I'm going to call that band together .fbx, and when you export as FBX, you need to include the animation, make sure that you're baking the animation, and also embed the media to make sure that all of the textures that are here and images are saved into the FBX file. So I'll say OK, it's saved, And now I can bring back Unity here. And I can go into my folder where I did put, so it's the casual game, export. And you see that we've got the bandtogether.fbx. You just need to take this, drag it into the project. It's going to import everything. And when it's in the project, it's ready to be used in your scene. So if I want to have the loop animation, I'm going to grab the band together here. You see that the animation wrap mode is to default, so it's only going to play once. But I can go back here and say loop this animation, and the animation on these guys will loop. And I'm going to drag it into the scene. Yes, I want to apply that. And you'll see that now I already placed the camera in the right spot so that we don't have to waste too much time adjusting the camera. But you see that here's my game. Here's the scene that we have in Unity, and the animation is all in there. So if I go File, Build Settings, I can build for the web player, the Unity web player. I can build as a PC standalone, and now you can build as a Flash SWF file, and this SWF file can be loaded into a web browser. So if you're into do a casual game for web, that you can now export with a Flash player. So let's go here and say build. So it's going to build this, and I'm going to put that as bt.swf file is what I want to build. And it's going to take a few seconds. I'm going to pause as it's building. And when it's done, you get the popping window that shows you where the builds have been saved. And now you can see that we have an HTML file. We've got the SWF file. So if I double click on the HTML file, it's going to give me a preview of what has been built. And I'm just going to say allow block content for here, and that's fine. And it's going to load the Flash player. And now we have our full animation as it was built inside of 3ds Max. So that's the workflow from taking a 2D object or 2D character, using different techniques to bring it to life in 3D, and then exporting it to Unity 3D, so that in Unity then you can start to add a bit more logic and test and put the gameplay into action for your game using all the Unity functionality. So that's the workflow for going from 2D to 3D. Going from 3D to 2D is kind of the reverse of what we saw a bit earlier. And the reason why you would do this is in 3D, the way that you animate with keyframes and the way that you can adjust a scene very quickly, and especially animation for characters, you can re-render sprites that you can use it in 2D games. So that's the case that of Field Runners made by Subatomic Studios. And this is the version 1 of Field Runners. They have a new one out now, but this is the kind of the game. So all of this here is 2D, but it's all rendered sprites that are used in the 2D engine. So all of the animations were done in 3D. So because it was done in 3D. Sorry about that. Because it wasn't in 3D, all of these animation can be easily tweaked and redone and re-rendered for the sprite, and the logic of the game is not changed, and you don't have to redraw all of these manually. So that's kind of the game here that we're going after. So these are the assets that we got from the game. So we've got the soldier here, and I've got different layouts to show you all of these a bit closer. I mentioned in Max 2013 we now have a tabbed layout, so you can have as many layouts that you want. So if I go here, you see that I'm going to have the layout for this soldier on the motorcycle. I've got another layout here which is full frame for the cow, and you see that the cow is animated with cat. I've got the helicopter here, just a simple animation. We've got the ostrich, again cat animation, and we've got this character, our main character, which is a soldier, and you see that he's animated with cat as well. I've intentionally made the animation 5 frames long so that we can render this animation and we can see the result. So we'll see that in this presentation. So we got this animation and we'd like to render it so that we're able to have the character go left, go right, go south, north, east, all of that. So in order to do that, instead of changing the direction of the character itself, we're going to film it from different point of view. So if I go here, I'm just going to zoom out. Oops, zoom out. And show you the setup that we have here. So we have a render setup with a lot of cameras, and all of these cameras are carefully placed so that the character looks like it's going in different directions just by the point of view of the camera. So if I just isolate the soldier and go back here, you see that those are the cameras. So camera southeast, camera southwest, and you can see that the character looks like it's going in different direction, but it's actually the same the same animation. And I've got the other one here that goes straight up, straight down, straight left or right. So all of these here can be rendered, and we can render them and create sprites out of those. So if I want to render this quickly, if I want to render multiple setup, what I'll do is I'll go back to my main menu here, or my main view, and I'll use the state sets, which are new to Max 2013, in order to render multiple sequence and also render maybe some passes if I want to create some effects with this. So I'm going to go in rendering, state sets. It's going to bring up the state set. I don't need the compositor for now. I don't need the compositor link of the output for now. We're going to set it up later. So to start with, just start from scratch, here what we need to define is what is it that we want to render and what passes that we want to render. So in this case here, I'll just call this cam maybe southwest or SW, and that's going to be my beauty pass for the southwest. So if I just go in record mode and say I want to switch my perspective view here to camera, and we chose southwest, so that's my southwest camera, and stop recording. And now we have, if I just go into this state set, it's going to bring me to that state set immediately. And if I go out, it's going to take me correctly to that to where I was before. What I'll do here is I'll show the save frame so that we can see what's being rendered. We know that it's correct, so it's a square kind of a shape, square render. So that's what we want to have for the sprite output, and that's good. So I want to create another one, so I'll add a new one, and I'll say, let's say cam underscore east. So for east, again, I'm going to go in record mode, and I'm going to switch my camera here to east and stop recording. So now I can go back very quickly to southwest or to east or just back to nothing or my original state. So no matter where I am in my scene or what I'm looking at, if I go in southwest, it's going to go immediately to there, to that camera. And same thing here for east, it's going to back there, and it's going to go to that camera, and then it's going to bring me back to my original perspective. So now that we've done this, I can also say, well, for the southwest camera here, I would like to be able to create a ambient occlusion pass. So to do that, I'll just go in add substate, and the substate here we're going to call that cam underscore southwest underscore AO for ambient occlusion. And for ambient occlusion, I'll go in record mode, and I'll say for this one, I'd like to go into the material editor. I'll create a material with, in the diffused channel, we're going to put a ambient reflection, and we're going to make this material fully self-illuminated, and we're just going to drop that material on the character here, and I'm going to rename this something like that. And now this is going to be my, ambient occlusion pass for this character. So if I just go out of this mode, you'll see that we're back to this. If I just look at the southwest camera, it's just a beauty pass. And if I go here, we're going to have our ambient occlusion pass. And for ambient occlusion, I need to make sure that I'm using mental array as a renderer, and it's actually already set up to mental array, so that's fine. So we're ready to render that. I'm going to just discard this one here. I don't really need it. I'm just going to use the camera southwest and the camera southwest ambient occlusion as my render passes for this. So when I'm ready to render, I need to define the render outputs. So I'm going to say I want to put that in my render output folder. State name is fine, and it's just going to automatically rename this. I'm going to say set the path for that. That's perfect. I'm just going to make sure that it's my current project. Yes, so set the path. So it did set the path for everything that I want to render. So I can go here now and say render all states, and it's going to render all of the states. So like I said, I've made it 5 frames so that we can render this during the presentation. And now we're going to get the ambient occlusion. And we're done. So all of this has been rendered. Everything that I asked for has been rendered. If I want to see it in context, I can go and use the compositor here, and it's going to load for me the compositor that I have. Right now the layers are not in the right order. My beauty pass is evaluated after. So I'll say bring the ambient occlusion at the top, and the ambient occlusion, I want that to be applied in a multiply mode. So now I can define how strong I want that to be. So if I want to play with the opacity here, I can say, well, reduce that a little bit, make it, 80%, something like that. And you can redefine all of this if you want to. But right now what I want to do is to bring this into a compositor where more advanced decisions can be taken. So if I go here in compositor, sorry about that again, compositor link, I'm going to create a link, and it's going to bring me to my, I'm just going to go to the, where I did render that, which is in the render output, and I'm going to call that AE link for After Effects link, and it's going to save everything. The camera, the light, but I don't need that, so I'll just say bring in only the footage, which is the only thing that I need now, and I'll say update that. And I can bring After Effects and say the exact same thing. So open compositor link, create link, and that's the one that I want, AE link. Create that, and automatically we've got this here. So if I double click here, we're going to have our soldier with the ambient occlusion pass on top here applied in the correct mode. So, and all of the animation is there. Now I can start to make some adjustment. I can say, well, this layer here, the ambient occlusion, I think it's too strong, so I can reduce it or make it stronger and things like that. And you can render these and make all of these adjustments to get the sprite look that you want in the end. So once comes the time to combine all of the sprites together, you can build your own tools and combine them together. And in this case here, I build a small script just to show you. It's in the, actually I've already loaded it, so I'm just going to bring the editor here. It's a small script that I created. It's called Sprite Sequence Builder. It just brings all of the rendered images into a single image, and that image can be used then as a sprite. So, so that's kind of the script. That script is not that interesting, but if I just right click here and bring up that script, it's called Sprite Sequence. I just need to just go and say I want to grab one of these images and say open, and as you can see here, I'm going to zoom out, it creates a single image in which all of these rendered images are loaded in here, and now this can be used as a sprite for the game. So that's kind of the context of going from 3D to 2D. And again, if you want to change one little thing about this walk cycle, you just go back, you just change it, maybe the head goes higher, something like that. You want the head to go to rotate sorry, to go rotate higher, you re-render this, and it's ready to be reincorporated into your game. So that's the workflow. All right, so now let's take a look at the extension release that we have shown for the first time at Siggraph 2012. It was a technology preview, but now it's available for download. If you're on subscription for 3ds Max 2013, you'll be able to download the extension release that I'm about to show you. The extension release focuses on Particleflow tools, and there's quite a few new addition into Particleflow. So I'm just going to open up Particleflow, and you'll see here that all of the new particle operators that have been added all have a little asterisk at the end. So you can see that we've got a few, the Mass Effects flow here, I'm going to show you in a second. We've got a few new birth operator, a few, the data operator is going to be very important because that's what's going to allow us to build our own particle operators with our own behaviors. And we've got Mass Effects tools there so that you can see that Mass Effects is now integrated in Particleflow. We've got some collision for Mass Effects, some test, test for Mass Effects. And also at the bottom here, we've got some cache operators that I'm going to show during the presentation. The cache disk is a big one. I think it brings a lot to Particleflow. It allows you to cache to disk rather than cache to RAM. So what it means that you can save a lot more data on the hard drive than in RAM. And also, if you want to render to the network, to the render farm, if you put your cache on the network, then every machine that has to do some network rendering will be able to access this cache, and you're not going to have all of your render nodes to simulate the Particleflow setup. So it's going to use the cache. So it's going to be, I think it's a game changer for caching with Particleflow. It's going to give you a lot more flexibility in terms of amount of particles that you can simulate and render with Particleflow. All right, so let's say that I'm going to start by showing you the Mass Effects integration. You can go and add all the operators one by one if you want to, but I'm just going to drag in here the Mass Effects flow, and it shows what it does. It creates a flow, a particle flow, with all of the events that you need for, all of the operators, sorry, that you need to create an event that will be working with Mass Effects. The birth grid is a new operator. What it does, it creates a grid of particles, and you define the size of the grid, and it defines how many. So the grid size here is allowing you, so you can define the icon size here, make it bigger, and it's going to define the size of your grid, and it's going to define how much particles you have inside of that grid. So it's just a quick way to add particles and do some tests and things like that. So that grid will be useful quite a lot. when you do a Mass Effects, if you want to do simulation with Mass Effects, like any other Mass Effects simulation, you need to define what type of geometry you will be using for your simulation. You don't have to use the geometry that's being displayed. You want to use a collision mesh. So in this case, we're using a box, but I can change that to a capsule or to a convex hull or to a sphere. And if I want to do it, to see it, I'm just going to go here and say show it in shaded. I can show it also in wireframe, and it allows me to see, if I'm using a capsule, what it's going to get, and if I use a convex hull, it's all going to look like box. And if I go back to box, this is what I get for this simulation. And I'm going to turn it back to none so that we just see the particles. The Mass Effects world will be very important. The Mass Effects world will define how it's going to get simulated. It's based on an icon. So if I go here and I click on it, you see that it selected this icon in the viewport. So that's the Mass Effects world, and that's represented as an icon in the viewport. So you can create multiple of them and have particle events react to different worlds if you want to. So if you want to define different gravities for different event, you can do that by creating multiple worlds, and that's different from the original Mass Effects inside of 3ds Max. So that's kind of different, but that's very powerful because each event can have its own simulation setting for if you want to create some more complex effects. So I just described what it was. If I just press play now, you're going to get the simulation, and you get the simulation of what we've set up, which is quite basic. But let's say that you want to create something that's a little bit more complicated, so something that's a little bit more fun. What I can do here is I'm going to rewind this, and I'm going to close particle flow for now. And what I'll do is I'll bring in a pillar that I've got here, and this is a single object. It's an editable poly, and I was going to show you how to break it with Fracture Voronoi, which is kind of my preferred tool for quickly breaking objects. But I've seen recently that there's a new script on scriptspot.com, which is very, very nice, and above all, it's free. So if you go to scriptspot.com and look for Frag, it's actually a modifier that allows you to break objects into pieces. So all you need to do is to download vorofrag.zip, and I've put the DLLs in the right spot. So now what I've got for this is, I'm just going to show you, it's a modifier, and this modifier is called Vorofrag. And you can define, there's a center here, and that center you can place it anywhere you want. And then you can define a number of chunks, and you can see that it's pretty interactive. I'm just going to ignore the normals there. You see that it's pretty interactive, and I can move the center of the breaking process here. So I didn't get a chance to play with it that much, but for now it just gives really good result, very fast, and it's very easy to say just detach them all. And now that you've detached them all, this object with the Vorofrag here can be moved away, and you see that all of these here are separate objects inside of the scene, which is nice. So I'm just going to delete the original object, and if you want to learn more, Vorofrag come with a PDF file in which you can read and see all of the details. So I didn't get a chance to explore it fully yet, but that's kind of a useful tool to get for free and have it in your tool set for 3ds Max. So what I'll do now is I'll just select one of those fragments, and I'll just say select similar to select all of them, and I'll bring back Particleflow. And what you can do with one of the new operator is that you can replace the birth grid by a operator called birth group. And the birth group is interesting because it's not a shape, it's not an instance modifier. What it does, it grabs the objects in the scene where they are in the scene, and it creates a particle setup with it. So right now I'm going to say the particle objects, I'm going to use the selected. So every fragment now has a particle. So I'm just going to move this one away, and actually I can just hide it. And hide selection, and you'll see that now my birth group is using this for creation, but now it's using a cube. So I'm just going to delete the cube. So now we get the original object. So all of these are the objects that were selected. They are defined here as particles, so they're going to be shown with the color of the particle flow setup. But you can see that the geometry is intact. It's exactly where it was in the viewport, and that was not possible to do before in particle flow unless you add someone that could script it for you. But now it's just using the birth group and picking the object. So what I'll do is, for it to look exactly the same, I'm just going to use a material static and use exactly the same one as we had for this. So It's actually, I'm just going to drag it from the material editor. That's the material. I'm going to drag it in here as an instance, and now we have exactly the same material for this geometry. So now if I simulate this, you'll see that it's going to explode, because if I take a look at the shape, we're now simulating as a box. I'm going to say simulate as a convex hull, and I'm not going to inflate any of that, so it's going to be exactly the same shape. So now it's just going to fall apart, and we're going to get that as a simulation. If I want this to be simulated with an object, a collision object, I can use the Mass Effects collision, drag it in here, and now it can enter in collision with any object in the scene. But the object need to have something specific. So the sphere here has the modifier for a collision shape, and you can make it activated or not activated. So if I activate it and I do say add this to my collision, now if I do a simulation, you'll see that it's going to have an impact on the simulation. But all of these here are particles, so you can do pretty much anything you want with that. In terms of now, if I say this test here, the Mass Effects collision will test true if it collides. So now what I can do is say, well, you know, some of old operators that we're used to use, the spawn operator. I'll say if you enter in collision with this object, you're going to spawn once this amount of particle, and I'll just display them as maybe circles so we can see them. So if I press play now, you'll see that we're going to get some circles, and they continue with the same speed. So now we can get some debris or some trails in there so that we can add more debris to that. So if I say once, but spawn a few ones and do some variations in there, and if I press play, you'll see that we're going to get some of them going in different direction. I can say inherit the speed maybe to 80% and add some variations in there, maybe like 50%. Some of them will be faster, some of them will be slower, and now we get some interesting kind of a shape there. And again, we're using the spawn operator, so we can decide to spawn more. We can decide to spawn trails if you want to. All of these things are fully accessible because now it's in the particle. All of these are in particle events, and the collision are detected, and you can create all sorts of things with that. Let's say that you've got something a bit more complex. I'm just going to add a new spawn operator here, and I'm going to say that's going to spawn by travel distance, and I'm going to show them by using dots. And the spawn by travel distance here, I'm going to say the inheritance here will be set to maybe 10%, so very small. And I'm going to press play here, and you'll see that all of those will be starting to emit particles there, or they're going to emit a trail. I can add some variation in there, variation in the space as well, and you can see that we're going to get that type of result. But if I press play now, you can see that as it goes a bit further in the animation, it starts to slow down because we've got a lot of particles in there. So that's where the cache operator comes in handy. So if I go and take a look at the new cache disk operator, I'm just going to drag this one here at the top, complete top. And I'll say I want to select a file, and I already did a test, so I'm just going to save that in my temp folder. And I'll say here, update. So now what's going to do, it's going to do the simulation of the particles. Sorry about that. Do the simulation of the particles for all the frames, and it's caching it to disk. And like I said, because it's caching it to disk, any other computer that I would use to render this animation sequence would be able to access that same cache file, and would be able to use it rather than having to simulate the whole particle flow setup. So if you've got millions and millions of particles, that's going to be a big savior for you in terms of render time. So I'm going to let it finish here and save it to disk. And as soon as it's saved to disk, you'll see that we're going to have much better playback speed in the viewport. So I'm just going to close this down here and press play. You'll see we get pretty much good playback, and that's the actual speed. But I can also scrub through very easily, without waiting for particle flow to update or doing anything like that. So it's just using the cache to show me the frames like so. So let's go back to Particleflow here. So again, that's using the Mass Effects integration of Particleflow, and you can take a look at the other forces and drag and all of these operators that we've added to create some various effects using Mass Effects. So I'm going to open up another file here, and this file, what I want to do is I want to create an operator that will define the position of the particle based on a map of the objects that is here. So right now I just created a simple setup, but you'll see why in a few minutes why I did that. So I'm going to go into particle view, and right now I have a birth group operator. The birth group allows me to have all of these boxes in place, and I want to define their height, like I said, based on the map of the plane that's underneath here. So all of those cubes are particles. As you can see, that's the birth group here, and the birth group is using boxes there. So that's my particles. So what I want to do, if I want to create my own operator, I'm going to bring in a data operator. And the data operator, I'll turn on auto update so that I can see the result in the viewport. And there's this tool here called edit data flow. And I'm going to try to maximize this window so that we can see pretty much everything and something like that. So the data operator comes with a set of operators in which you can create your own behavior. And it's a quite robust and complete tool set to create operators, and there's a lot in there. You'll see as we're going to start to use some of them, you'll see that there's a lot of options for everything that we have here. So you got functions, you got color, you can convert, you can do some you can pick object in the scene, you can output Mass Effect settings, you can, there's a lot of things in there. You can write your own script to define your own behaviors. You can put notes in there if you want to put notes. Anyway, so let's build something. Like I said, we want to use the height of this object as a particle height definition. So in order to be able to use this object, we need to use the select object operator. So the select object allows me to go here and say I want to pick this object, and this object is the output here is orange. That means that's an object that has been sent out of this operator. What I'd like to do is I want to know for each particle which is the closest point on the surface. So there's a geometry node here. So if I just bring in here, I can go and see all of the properties that I can access to this, and there's a lot of them. So you can see here, you can see that a lot of them are there. So what I want to know is I want to know the closest point on the surface. So I'll go here, and if I just drag in here the object, this operator now feeds me for every particle that is here. It's going to feed outside here the closest point on that surface. So what I'll do is I'll bring in another geometry, and this time for this geometry I want to know the color at that point. So I'll say point color, and the point color takes two input. So you need to define, this is the object I want to find the color, and this is the point where I want to find the color. So now what's happening is that here we've got the color at the closest point of this particle, and that's what we want to use as the definition of the height. So I'm going to pause for answering the phone. So sorry about that, it was marketing. So just going to continue my recording here. So we have now the point color at the, so this is the color at the point that's closest to the surface. So what I want to do with this, I want to use it to define something. So I'm going to use an output standard, which is defining something that I want to output outside of this data operator. And you see the position, I can set it to a vector, or I can just say I just care about the Z component, and that's what I want to define. So the Z component is what I want to output. But what is it that I want to output? So you can see that here we've got the point color. What I can do here is I can say convert this. So convert this information, all of this from a vector to a real value. And by default, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to take the average or the length of this map, which is the color or the gray scale intensity, if you say, and that's what I want to define. So I'm just going to drag this in here. And as you saw here, immediately, if I just break that link, so I'm just going to delete that link, oops, grab it and delete it. You see that as soon as we connect it, we see that the height where it's white, it's getting higher, and where it's dark, it's getting lower. But I'd like to multiply that so that we can get a bit more out of it, and it's going to be scaled a bit more. So what I'll do is I'll go and I'll use a function. And the function here, I'll say those are two real values that I want to work with. I don't want to add them, I want to multiply them. So what I'll do is I'll take this value here and I'll feed it in here. And right now it's not multiplied by anything. So what I'll do is I'll use a scalar, drag it in here, and say this is a float, and I'm going to feed it here as a multiplication. And now if you bring in the value of the multiplication here, you see that this is going to be going higher. So this is kind of the idea. This is how you build those operators. Right now, like I said, I've just shown you the surface of what you can do. If you want this to be a little bit cleaner, you can connect these things together like that if you want to. So you can connect these things and have a bit of a cleaner environment. But what's going to be great about that is I'm going to close this for now. You see that this is my data operator, and this is what defines the height of the particles. I've created my data flow, but let's say that I want to have here some parameters that I want to be able to access to change how I use this operator. So I'm going to go back to the data flow, and I'll say the first thing, sometimes I want to make this operator more generic so that it can be used in any context. So what I'll do is I'll right click and I'll say expose the object itself, and I'll say object colon, and I'm going to say add that, and now that's going to be the object. That's going to be one parameter, and I'll say the scalar that I've created here, the value the value of the scalar, I want that to be exposed as well, and I'm going to call that the multiplier colon, and I'm going to add that to the operator as well. So if I close this and I close this, you'll see that at the bottom here we have now the object that I can go back and say pick this one, and the multiplier is also accessible from here. Now I can go here and say save a preset. So I can save a preset as a data preset and be able to load it when I use a data preset from here from the bin, or I can say create an operator, and we're going to choose an icon. Let's say that we choose this one here. That's going to be our icon, and we're going to call it height by map, and say OK. And now the preset has been created. It's not going to be listed right away. You need to restart 3ds Max to be able to load it, but it's there. So what I'll do now is I'll just restart Max. So here we go. If I now go in Graph Editor, Particle View, you'll see that height by map is now available. So if I drag that in here, you'll see that it's no longer a data operator. It's just a regular operator with the icon that I've chosen and the two settings that I've set up for this. So now if I go here, I just created another file. And this is this one here. And actually, I need to browse for this window here. Let me just find it in my material. I'm just going to grab the material from that guy. And that map here is going to be in my scene assets. And that's going to be in images. And I've got here, I'm going to browse through the bottom here. And actually, I'm just going to go into details. We have an MOV file called teapot.ztap.mov, and that teapot.ztap I've rendered it as an MOV file, so that's something that's new inside of Max 2013, is that you can now use QuickTime movies in 64-bit, and what it is just a ZDEP render of a teapot rolling on itself. And what I've done here is if I just bring in the graph editor for Particleflow, I've created a grid, and this grid is made of needles. So what we want to do is we want to define the needle's height based on this footage that is underneath here. So what I'll do is I'll use my height by map. I'll just bring it in here, say I want to pick the object. I'm going to pick the object here, and I want to define the multiplier here. And now you can see that we can easily scrub through, and we have this needle kind of effect where needle frame kind of effect where the teapot, and I can make it actually a bit higher. And if I want to see this in real time, again, I'm just going to cache it so that all of the transformation for all of the particles in geometry, I'll just put it in the same spot here and say update, and it's going to put it into the cache. It's going to take a few seconds. It's quite fast because we're not affecting that much in there. And once it's done, you'll get your particle effect. So I can stop it now, and we can zoom in on this guy, and you see that I can now scrub through, and we have the teapot effect of the in a needle frame. So that's kind of an overview of the extension release. Like I said, there's a lot more to it. I strongly encourage that if you have access to the subscription, if you're on subscription and you have access to this extension, please download it. You'll have a lot of fun with it. So that's it. All right, so thank you for attending this session today. I hope you enjoyed it. Before we leave, I just want to mention that I have my blog on Area. So it's area.autodesk.com/Louis. And what you'll find there is tons of tutorials for free on 3ds Max, Match Mover, Motion Builder, and a few other things among all of these software. So it's free, so I encourage you to look at them. And I try to always give you as much information and inspiration as I can on my blog. So thank you again for attending, and have a good day.